Hey everybody, it's Mrs. New here. We are back for third video in this series about how to make the Engobe bowl or the Drape bowl. Mine has been hanging out in a bag for about 24 hours, maybe a little bit more. And it's still on this mold. And today is the day that I get to take it off of the form, okay? And I'm gonna apply my Engobe. So I'm gonna go ahead and carefully remove this. Now, the foot that I threw on the wheel is now leather hard, so I'm not worried about flipping this over. So I'm gonna go ahead and check out what's going on the other side. And I'm done with the form at this point. So I can go ahead and put this back underneath the cabinet and someone else can use this. So I'm gonna do that while I am thinking about what I'm gonna do here. So let's talk a little bit about the Engobe. The Engobe lives in these little jars and they're labeled. So this one is the red iron oxide. And basically they should be the consistency of kind of like a thicker cream. So they should be kind of like applesauce, I guess, would be a good explanation, right? I'm gonna go ahead and put this on a board because I don't want the iron oxide. This one in particular is really stainy. So you wanna make sure to give them a good stir up, but I am ready to apply my Engobe. So notice that this is not bisque fired, right? This is just leather hard clay. And I'm ready to put my Engobe. Before I do that, I want to just kind of check this out. Make sure to get any of the little white flakes that might have flaked from the mold. Kind of wipe those off. You could even take a little bit of a wet sponge if you wanted to, but mine's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and apply the Engobe. So again, this sort of thicker cream feeling. This mine that I'm using today is a little on the thin side. Yours might be a little thicker. It really just depends. So what this is basically a powdered colorant added to slip, added to just clay and water. So what's really fun about using Engobes is that you can do some carving with these. You'll notice that right away, the moisture is kind of soaking down into this leather hard clay, right? This leather hard clay is like, ooh, introducing some water to me and I'm just gonna soak it right in. So you wanna be careful of your brush strokes a little bit. So try to kind of keep them even. Notice I'm using a bigger sort of flat brush and I am just applying this all the way around. Now I also like to apply it on the edge of my bowl because just like what I did right there, it's really hard to not get it on the edge. So I usually go ahead and do the whole inside and then I will come back and just do the edge right here. You don't have to put Engobe on the bottom part of your bowl. That would just mean that the bottom part of your bowl is going to be white. And anything I carve through this red iron oxide stain is going to be the white of the clay. So I am going to do my carving again while the clay is leather hard. So what's going to happen is I'm going to put this back in a bag today. So I'm going to put my Engobe on and I'm going to let it hang out back in a bag. Don't let it get bone dry, okay? But while it is kind of, you know, getting drier in a bag, I'm gonna work on my design. So I wanna talk a little bit about that in this video. So you can see the Engobe goes on pretty quickly. I'm gonna let this hang out and kind of get more dry. You can see it's starting to dry already. And I'm gonna hit it with another coat. So I'm gonna do 2 coats of this. I'm not putting any Engobe on the bottom, but I am checking and making sure I sort of did my edge and I put a pretty good layer. So I'm gonna go back over this and do another coat. But while it's sitting and setting up for a minute, let's talk a little bit about your designs. So I have a bunch of books that I'll put out for you, but I wanna talk about what works well for this particular project. So when you're looking for imagery, one thing that can look really, or that can help you when if you're printing something out from the computer is to type in what you want and then type in the word stencil after it. What that will do is instead of giving you sort of a line design, you'll get more of like a shape of something. So like here's a better example of this. So here is kind of more of this shape that you can see the person poked the design through this tracing paper. So what you'd want to do is have a printout, or you can look through one of my books and find an image. You could also hand draw an image. And then you're going to go ahead and use the tracing paper. So the tracing paper lives in this file that says tracing paper. Okay, and I have it cut into these little pieces. If you need a bigger piece, just let me know. And that way you can put this down on a book, or you can use a printout. So let's just look at what some other kids have done for this, you know, for design. So this is more of a line design. some like a floral design. These are just some that I kind of had hanging out in the file. These work really good. So think in terms of shapes, because anything that's more like a stencil shape, this is a really good example, is going to be easier to carve out than perhaps just doing like a line design. So think of it in terms of, I'm going to cut out all these shapes of the Engobe, and then that's going to reveal the design. So let me see if I can kind of show you. This one's more of a line design, but here's one that I've done in the past. It's really dusty. So you can see when we start to carve these with the little loop tools and stuff, it's really fun to do a border around the edge and maybe carve out whole sections. This one's more, like I said, more like a line design, but I did do some texture in here of the different feathers and things like that. Here's another sort of bird one where there's more of a whole shape that's carved out, right? So you kind of need to think about your design, and you want it to be something that's going to fit inside of your bowl. So a lot of students will do sort of something in the middle and then like a border around the edge, and that looks really good. So whatever you choose, make sure to sort of trace it out onto this tracing paper. And then the way that we transfer it, you guys, is the same we did in Ceramics 1 with the pokey pokey. All right, so if we look at this paper, we can see this person poked all the lines with a needle tool. Now, the other nice thing about having it on this tracing paper is that when I go to poke the design on my Engobe bowl, this is a little more lightweight than, you know, just a regular piece of paper, and it tends not to rip and stick. So if you think back to those name plaques and stuff, sometimes when you'd peel the paper back, it would stick onto the clay, and this tracing paper doesn't do that as badly. So that's more important with this project because we don't want to mess up the layer of Engobe. Okay, so if I was ready, I'd probably have another layer on here, but saying I'm ready, I would put this on there and I would poke out the designs. Then I would connect them with a number 2 pencil, works the best. I would not use a needle tool. A needle tool is going to give you a really skinny line, and what you actually want is a little bit of a thicker line. So a number 2 pencil works good, the baby loop tools work good, and even some of the bigger loop tools, okay? And then maybe think about a border, something that goes around the edge. But as this is setting up and drying, I'm going to do coat 2 on this, and then it's going to go back in a bag. And then on the last video in this series, I'll go ahead and show you some tips for carving and talk a little bit about that. Probably the main tip for carving, you guys, is you don't want to carve when your bowl is too wet, right? Because you want, when you carve, you want those little carvings to sort of just come right off, and you don't want them to stick to the background. So one more coat of Engobe on this one, and back in a bag, and then working on my design while it's hanging out in the bag. And then the next class period is when I would poke the design and carve. So really it's day 1, create the bowl, right? So cut out the slab, do the coil, do the foot on the wheel. Day 2 is applying your Engobe, and day 3 is carving. So you're gonna need at least 3 class periods for this project, and sometimes the carving takes 2 class periods. It just depends on what kind of design you're doing. So go back to the slideshow of what other students have done, and you can see, you can get some really cool, pretty complicated designs going for this project, and really think about your drawing skills. If you're not the best at drawing, go ahead and trace something, print something out, find something in a book. All right, guys? All right, thanks. I'll see you soon. Bye.